Hi, I'm Susan Shaner with Sage Leadership Strategies, and I'm your host today of Community Forum. And I have the great pleasure to have with me Jean Bowen, who is currently the president of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Danbury, and the Reverend Sue Spencer, who is the Interim Minister at the congregation, otherwise known as UUCD. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. So I thought the first question I would ask to educate our audience is, tell us what Unitarian Universalism is.
Okay. There's a lot that we could say about Unitarian Universalism. To try to sum it up, it's a very contemporary faith with historic roots, going back to the Radical Reformation of the 1500s in Europe, especially Central Europe. Unitarian Universalism is formed from two liberal Christian sets of beliefs. Unitarianism comes from a sense of the unity of God and with a focus on the humanity rather than the divinity of Jesus. And Universalism is a doctrine of universal salvation, which stems from the idea that a loving God would never condemn anyone to eternal damnation, but rather would seek to restore all beings to holiness and happiness. Those are our roots.
And so it was really the joining of those two religions, if you will,
Yes.
in the 60s?
Yes, they merged. The two denominations in the United States merged in 1961 and became one movement.
You know, now I had never heard of Unitarian Universalism until about 10 years ago. And my first response was, and I've come to learn, this is a lot of people's responses, is I thought it was a cult, actually. I was like, isn't that a cult or something? So why does it have that reputation?
I think that's because it's one of the smaller religions. And people just don't understand, it has this very long name.
Yeah.
And it just has a sort of an interesting sound to it, and it's small. But in fact, it is a system of beliefs where people share common values and principles that we all believe in, rather than a creed. So people come from a variety of spiritual backgrounds. They've been members of a Catholic church or of a Jewish faith or Protestants, and they were somehow unsettled or dissatisfied with those places, and came to were searching for a place where they could explore their spirituality, they could share humanistic tendencies and principles with others.
Well, it's interesting because I know my father-in-law always calls it the non-religion religion, probably because there isn't a central dogma or belief.
Creed, yeah.
Can you say something more about, I know it's based on 7 principles?
That's how we share our beliefs, instead of believing in what a typical, church believes in. We share these principles, which first one is we respect the inherent worth and dignity of each person. We believe in peace and justice and compassion for other people. We have a common ground in our dedication to protecting the earth and defending the earth. And what others, Sue?
There's a strong belief in the democratic process. Each one of our congregations is congregationally run. We govern ourselves. And of course that puts us in common with the Congregationalists in town as well, and and the Baptists, I think, as well.
So, that's interesting. This might be an interesting point to talk about. Now, you're an interim minister. Can you tell us what that means?
Yeah. It means that I am specially trained, or I'm actually in the process of being trained to help congregations who are in transition. A congregation loses its minister for any number of reasons. In Danbury's case, the last settled minister left because after a 5-year, as by all accounts, successful ministry, because she wanted to be closer to her family. So then somebody who has some training as an interim comes in, spends a year or two with the congregation, helps it to uncover the challenges it faces, the issues that it wants to work on, and works to get it ready to receive a new settled minister. And as a matter of fact, the congregation just yesterday called Barbara Fast to be its new minister, and she will start sometime in late summer. And I will go on and serve another interim position.
So
And our issue here is that we're trying to make that transition by growing, by our activism in the community. We are trying to make that transition from a small, family-centered, pastoral congregation, as we're called, to a ministry or program size and focus, so that we don't just have a relationship with the minister, we have relationships with each other, we grow our programs. We have a very strong mission and focus in social activism, and many of our members are very socially active in...
So when you say grow, you mean grow in numbers, but also in complexity in
Right.
terms of different programs and
Right.
different things that go on inside the congregation.
Right.
I know UUCD has been involved in the immigration over
Yes.
the last couple of years.
That's
Do you want
right.
to speak to that or
Yes.
other social issues that the congregation gets involved in?
We,
It's kind of like mixing church and politics. I know we're hitting all the hot topics. I mean, we won't do the other one. We'll just do religion and politics today.
That's a good one. We like this. We stand with people who have been devalued or discriminated or set apart from the community. We respect the inherent worth and dignity of each person.
Of every person.
Right.
Yeah.
And in our community, a very hot ticket item has been sharing our community with people who come to us from other countries who may or may not be documented here legally. And so we have a number of members who, and as a congregation, we went through our own internal search about how we can support immigrants or should we not. And the sentiment in the community, of course, in Greater Danbury, this has been a very challenging and difficult issue. And we felt that it was important for us to stand with people who perhaps were working hard, needed us to stand with them and testify about their stories. And so we supported an effort to become part of the new sanctuary movement, which basically adopts a family to help them with their process to become citizens.
So is there more you can say about that particular family or how that process is going? Or?
Well, I'm not sure I can.
Okay.
Only because I'm not personally involved with that particular outreach. But,
Okay.
Yeah, the focus has actually been more towards advocacy for changes in legislation and changes in public policy.
Okay. And then the congregation is also involved in the soup kitchen in Danbury.
Oh, yeah. We have a dedicated group of folks who participate in the soup kitchen, but are also very involved in the issues that people experience when they become homeless, and trying to make some changes there and provide support where needed. We've provided became a part of a legal resource, coordinated legal resource for immigrants. We assisted immigrants to attend a march in Washington, D.C. recently.
Now, I know you started a community garden last year.
Yes. Yes, this is a great source of pride.
Yeah.
We have a group called So Green, and they have developed, in cooperation with a community landlord, a parcel of property right in downtown Danbury, so on State Street, as a matter of fact, and it's our community garden. So people can come and develop a plot. They can support another group to develop a plot, and this will be our second year.
That's fantastic. Now, I know that Unitarian Universalism, my understanding is it's like 2% of the world's religions. Is that figure roughly accurate? I mean, it's very small.
I would be really surprised if it were up to 2%.
Oh, it's lower than 2%.
It's tiny. It's really tiny. But historically, our influence has been out of proportion to our size. For instance, many signers of the Declaration of Independence were Unitarians or Universalists. Many of the innovations of the 19th century were brought about by people from either side of either Unitarians or Universalists, and that includes women's suffrage and campaigns for prison reform. Dorothea Dix was a Unitarian.
You know, it's interesting. Yeah, it's sort of a small group, but has a big voice, even in Danbury, in terms of the social activism in the city. I know this congregation was founded in 1822, it's quite a while ago.
Yeah, 12 people was the
It's
beginning.
incredible that it's sustained all this time, and then went to, in the 70s, to West Reading, and then just came back and built the building on the hill, as affectionately referred to on the ridge, in 2000, was it 2006?
I think 05.
05?
Yeah.
So what was the reason for the congregation to leave and then come back?
Well, we had this restart in Ridgefield, North Salem, New York, and then West Reading, where we were in a barn. And we were very isolated from the community. West Reading is, you know, beautiful.
Pretty.
Yeah, beautiful. But we were not a part of the community. And it was very important to us to be a part of the community and to be able to be accessible and involved in the greater Danbury area. So after quite a challenging term of planning, we developed, we built this place on the ridge, 24 Clapboard Ridge Road, and it's a beautiful space. We have a beautiful piece of property, a house and a beautiful hall, and where we felt at home.
So was it part of the objective just to be closer to the greater Danbury, an urban area, to get more involved in the
Yes.
issues and be more of a presence?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to expand our opportunities for ministry, possibly to expand our diversity of
Yeah.
membership.
You know, I know that all Unitarian Universalist congregations are run independently, so they all sort of take on their own character or culture or personality. I know, Sue, you've been affiliated with the congregation now for almost 2 years. What have
Right.
been your observations about the character and personality of this particular congregation?
Yeah, well, I could go on for a while. I've served congregations in many different parts of North America over 25 years, and I would say this one is distinguished by many things. Social conscience, which really extends to walking the talk at a very local level. I think that's very important. Congregational health. This is, compared to other congregations I've served, it's quite a healthy congregation. There's not a lot of dysfunction. There's, you know, any congregation is going to have some, but people seem to be able to handle conflicts for the most part in an above-board and intentional way.
So are there other ways in which you would characterize what constitutes a healthy congregation? So handling conflict is one.
Yeah, the congregation laughs easily together.
That's important.
It is. It helps to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a strong community. I guess that's the one thing I would leave with your viewers also, is that this is a place where you have freedom to have the open mind and ask a lot of questions about religion, about theology, about being humanist. And it's a community for folks who are looking for a community of support, of shared interest, of intellectual inquiry. This is what UUCD is.
I know that's what you do with the kids, right? Open mind, helping hands, and was it loving heart?
Something like
Sounds
that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Head, hands, heart. I remember that.
Right.
Okay. So were there other ways that you were going to, other observations you were going to make about this
About
particular
this
congregation?
particular
Yeah.
congregation? Well, I was so moved by the story that the congregation told in the materials that they put out when they were looking for an interim minister. I looked at their story and I said, wow, you know, there were lots of stories in the 60s and 70s about congregations moving out to the suburbs, leaving
Yeah.
the inner city, and that's what the Danbury congregation did, as a matter of fact. But I haven't read very many stories about congregations coming back again. So to take that courageous step of leaving a place that's been comfortable and warm and cozy and
Yeah.
and coming up on this wind-swept ridge on
Yeah.
Clabbered Ridge Road.
So visionary and courageous.
Yeah, yeah. That was very impressive, and I've not been disappointed by coming and being with the congregation for these 2 years. I was struck right away by how talented the people were and how much creativity there is amongst this particular group. And they laugh at my jokes.
Yeah, that
in the
always
sermons,
helps.
which helps a lot.
She is pretty funny.
What would be an example of the congregation's creativity?
Well, I think coming up with the idea of the community garden is actually a pretty good example
Yeah.
of it. And I had actually, I'd made an offhand reference in a sermon about the third week I was there about having been part of a community that had an organic garden, and saying that I was looking out the windows with envy at this beautiful plot of land. And so I was thinking, well, why don't we have a garden on the premises, a community garden? But other people had a much better idea, which would be to take it downtown and where it was accessible to more people. And just the name, So Green, and the publicity that surrounded
That's so great.
it.
Yeah.
That's
It
so
is.
great.
It
That's
is.
a great
It
name.
is. Yeah.
So that's one example, but it's kind of infuses the whole life of the congregation. I find the minister puts on the worship service and preaches probably 3 or 4 times a month, but then not in the summer, and lay leaders take over and do the worship services on the minister's Sunday off, and then in July and August. And I was so impressed when I got there with the breadth and depth of the services that were offered, and again, the creativity that went into those.
And that's very democratic in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to have lay people in the congregation do the services.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I understand that the whole structure of the Unitarian Universalism Church was different than other churches. For example, you know, like the Catholic Church, you've got the Pope, you know, kind of the head guy, right? But that UUism is led by a president of its association who has said that the mission of a UU congregation is to spread its faith. It has a moral imperative to spread its faith. And my understanding of this religion is that it hasn't typically engaged in evangelical, I can't say that word, you know, evangelizing.
The E word.
The E word. What would you say to this in terms of this religion, it being a moral imperative? In other words, I'm wondering if there's people out there who are UUs and don't know it. And religion's been such a hot topic throughout humanity, but especially today in terms of wars being fought over.
Yeah, I think there are lots of people around who have no idea that there might be a congregation that they could join that did not require any particular set of beliefs, that a congregation that accepts people as they are. Sometimes I'll get up and say, you know, we welcome you, whoever you are, and whatever you are, and wherever you may be on your journey of faith. And we really mean that. People are afraid, or some people are afraid from religious experiences they've had in other places, that they're going to have to fit some particular criterion of what it means to be a person of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And here at the UUCD, we don't ask that. We invite people to come with their questions and their doubts and even their atheism.
So you have atheists that
yes.
belong.
Yeah, there are atheists and there are Christians and Buddhists.
A whole mix of people standing.
mix,
I know you have a
yeah.
lot of interfaith couples.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
People are from various backgrounds, and I guess I would describe myself also as a humanist. Not so sure about the Christian side of my background, but was looking for a place where I could grow, and clearly had some spiritual yearning that I wanted filled. And I still remain somewhat uncomfortable about church.
And some people don't even like to call it a church,
Right, we don't.
Yeah.
Some of us don't. But it is a community for me where I can grow and learn more about my spiritual side, as well as having all this good fun and community and friendship with people.
Now, obviously this is considered a liberal religion, and sometimes people automatically equate liberal religion with liberal politics. And given that there's a lot of social activism here, what would you say to that?
I'd say take a deep breath, people. This is such a divided time in our country and in
Yeah.
our state and our city. And this is New England, you know. This has been the home of the Weicker Republicans and the Kennedy Democrats. And we all have really have good, strong beliefs when it comes time to be, whether it's liberal or conservative. It's not easy to pigeonhole people. It shouldn't be this easy as it's been. And I would say the UUs are strongly identified as what some people call liberal. But, you know, when you start to talk to folks about their beliefs, and the UUs have very strong beliefs at a variety of political issues, they come across as Democrat, Republican, moderate, conservative, liberal. So,
You know, it's interesting. I think a lot of our viewers might be fascinated to learn, as you said, Sue, that a lot of the founding fathers of this country were UUs, which I find fascinating.
Some of the mothers, too.
Some of the founding mothers, too. I'm sorry.
Abigail Adams.
Abigail Adams.
Leave it to a UU to say that, right? Sure, you bet.
Right.
Everybody.
Right, right.
But in terms of being independent thinkers.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say, what would you say if somebody was interested in learning more about UUism would be the best way to go about it?
Just come. Just come. It's a very welcoming community for all kinds of folks. And just walk in, because there's greeters, there's people who want to shake your hand and welcome you. And every Sunday is different. Every service is a little different. It's either lay-led or led by Reverend Spencer. And they're very interesting intellectually, and they will catch you emotionally. There's singing, you know, there's a couple of hymns, a couple of opportunities to meditate and to sit quietly. And there's also an opportunity to share a milestone in your life. So just come.
So what does that mean, to share a milestone?
It's a time in our service on Sunday morning where people feel comfortable in raising before the congregation their joys, the joys in their life, and sorrows.
So it sounds like it has some sort of structure to it. It's not so unstructured,
Right.
but is it as structured, let's say, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, some sort of more orthodox religion.
There's a start and an end, ending with food and coffee. 2 services generally, 9 and 11 o'clock, except in the summer when there's one service at 10. There's religious education for children, where we offer children activities and understanding of the world religions and principles.
So, you know, in these times where, you know, the world's really in crisis, there's a lot of shifts and changes taking place on the planet, and a lot of it is charged by people having debates or controversy over religions, or what their religion is, or having wars over religion. What does Unitarianism have to offer in terms of bringing the world together?
Well, I think just being able to sit side by side with someone who's a Catholic, someone who's a Christian, someone who's a Jew, someone who is an atheist, and to find some common ground is very important in this.
I mean, are there other religions in there other than, you know, Jewish, Christian, atheist? I mean, you know, you mentioned Buddhism. What about Hinduism, you know, paganism? Some of, you know, there's a whole bunch of world religions. What would you say to some of the other religions?
What would we say to them?
In terms of how do you incorporate an appreciation for those religions into your services?
Yeah, well, one of the foci of our services will sometimes be an exploration of a different religious tradition. Now, sometimes it will be by somebody who's a member of that tradition. For instance, we have somebody in the congregation who is a Hindu who gave a service. He was one of the presenters of a service during the summer, the first summer I came. But we respect all of the deep traditions of the world and find value in them without trying to have an amalgam of different faiths, or, you know, we don't think that we can blend them all into one super religion, but each tradition brings its own treasures and we can learn from them.
So you have members who practice another faith and also come to UUCD?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are people with Buddhist practice. We actually have some practicing Catholics who come to the congregation.
Sounds like that's a lot of church on Sunday. You go to both. Well, so this has been really informative. So you said if someone was interested, they could just come, or is there a website?
Check out our website.
Okay.
It's uudanbury.org.
Okay, great. You want to say it one more time?
uudanbury.org.
Okay, great. Ladies, thank you for having us on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
I'm Susan Shaner with Community Forum. Until next time, thank you for joining us.